for the release of all hostages held in Gaza and Palestinian detainees held in Israeli prisons, for the unimpeded humanitarian access in Gaza. I also call on Israel to cease all its actions that are dismantling the two-state solution and the possibility of peace in the Middle East region. I thank you.
I thank His Excellency Mr. Todt for the statement. I now give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Lars Løkke Rasmussen, Minister for Foreign Affairs of Denmark.
Thank you, Mr. President. At the outset, I want to thank Mr. Cho Hyun, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Korea, for convening this meeting. And I also want to thank the Secretary General for his very insightful briefing. Through the chaos of this abhorrent war, he has consistently raised his voice and that of United Nations in support of peace. And Denmark commend this kind of leadership. And I would also like to take this opportunity to thank the tireless efforts and sacrifice of the UN staff on the ground. Colleagues, I'm speaking to you today not only as the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Denmark, and by so a politician responsible to the people of Denmark, but also as a member of this Council responsible for the maintenance of international peace and security, and as a grandfather responsible to my grandchildren, who I'm totally convinced one day will ask what I did, what we did, in the face of such immense suffering. Colleagues, I ask you today, how will we answer them? That we stepped up and met the challenge of peace, or that we idled in inaction and watched helplessly as the horrors unfolded? Mr. President, nearly 2 years have passed since the war in Gaza began. It was unleashed by the horrific terrorist attack by Hamas on the October 7th, an attack that tore through Israeli families, that left parents without children, children without parents, a nation wounded to its core, hostages and their families going through unimaginable suffering. Denmark has condemned this attack in the strongest terms possible, and we will continue to do so, just as we will continue to insist on the immediate and safe release of every hostage. Denmark considers itself as a long-standing friend of the people of Israel. Israel has the right to defend itself against terrorism. This I have always supported, and this I will continue to support. But friends also have to speak the truth to each other. And today we must face the fact that Israel's war in Gaza has created a humanitarian catastrophe of unbearable scale. Israel must comply with international law, including international humanitarian law. The human suffering in Gaza must be brought to an end, and it must happen now. Tens of thousands of civilians have already been killed, including over 18,000 children. This constitutes a classroom of children every day. It constitutes a humanitarian and human failure of unprecedented scale. We are witnessing an ongoing expanding military operation in Gaza City. Children starving with no access to clean water or medicine. Doctors forced to amputate without sedation. Mothers powerless to feed their babies. A famine unfolding before our eyes. While the World Food Programme alone has enough food to feed Gaza for months waiting at the border. This is also why Denmark, on behalf of the E10, coordinated a resolution for this Council just last week. The resolution demanded a ceasefire, the release of all hostages, and that the government of Israel immediately lift all restrictions on the entry of humanitarian aid into Gaza in line with international humanitarian law. These are demands that the international community has reiterated on multiple occasions, including just yesterday in the General Assembly. And I deeply regret that the resolution did not receive the support of all 15 Council members. But today, I restate these demands. Israel must change its course immediately. The war in Gaza must end. The Security Council, as the body responsible for international peace and security, should be able to make these demands. Indeed, this should be the bare minimum that we can do. But around this table, that means all of us, every single member, working in concert and common cause towards this goal. It means setting aside political differences to save lives. Last week, 14 members of this council were willing to do this. We hope that this can soon become all 15. So to our American friends, just this morning, President Trump said that we have to stop the war in Gaza immediately. He said we have to negotiate immediately to negotiate for peace. Denmark continues to support the dedicated efforts of the US, Qatar, and Egypt to mediate a ceasefire. Your unwavering commitment to find a path to peace is critical in the context, but we count on you in this Council too. Your leadership is critical in our joint aspirations of bringing peace and stability to the region. Mr. President, I will conclude very soon. Denmark has consistently contributed to ease the suffering through humanitarian contributions. Together with 24 other countries and the EU, we have called on Israel to resume medical evacuations from Gaza to the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, and we stand ready to support the treatment of those patients. Mr. President, 2 weeks ago, I visited the region, which I have done several times since 7 October. I have met with the Israeli families of hostages. The pain is real. The demand must be immediately and unconditionally answered. I also met with Palestinians in the West Bank who face checkpoints, settlements, settler violence, destroyed property and land grabbing, and their pain is real as well. The longing for freedom and dignity is evident. So, Mr. President, the two-state solution remains the only solution to lasting peace for two people, both deserving of security, both deserving of dignity. This was confirmed during the high-level conference on the two-state solution yesterday. It is clear that the momentum is growing, that we are witnessing a renewed energy and enthusiasm for peace based on the two-state solution, a solution that Denmark is prepared to build on. And this is why I said yesterday, and that I repeat today, the keys to recognition of the Palestinian state should no longer lie in the hands of the Israeli government. The Palestinians themselves must become masters of their own destiny. The time for the end of this decades-long struggle is now. The only path to lasting peace is the two-state solution for both Palestinians and Israelis. Thank you.
I thank His Excellency Mr. Rasmussen for the statement. I now give the floor to Her Excellency Ms. Yvette Cooper, MP, Secretary of State for Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Affairs of the United Kingdom.
Can I thank the President today and also the Secretary General for the briefing at the beginning of this crucial session. Yesterday, alongside other ministers here in New York this week, I hosted a session to hear from doctors who have recently returned from Gaza. And the stories they told would stay with me forever. One told of the screams of toddlers and the scream of a toddler who she had operated on without full anesthetics, and how she hoped and prayed that he would not feel pain. Another told of the seriously malnourished pregnant women affecting their babies, and they talked about doctors and nurses whose family members were killed but who still came back to work in hospitals in unimaginable conditions to help others. And they told of how the absolute basics of modern medicine, like antibiotics and anesthetics, things that we around this council table take for granted for ourselves and our loved ones, were unavailable, blocked and denied. And we say the words humanitarian crisis, but this is what it means, the pain and the screams of a toddler who cannot get the basic health care that they need. And only 18 out of 36 hospitals in Gaza now remain open, all of them struggling to operate amid severe shortages of fuel, medicine, equipment, and staff. Over 1,700 healthcare workers have been killed in Gaza, more than 300 detained. This is what the catastrophic collapse of Gaza's healthcare system looks like. And as we are gathered here, Israeli forces are escalating the conflict in Gaza City, pounding more homes into rubble, sending frightened families scattering. It is incomprehensible, it is inhumane, it is utterly unjustifiable, and it must end. All that this action from the Israeli government will do is make a catastrophic humanitarian situation worse. More healthcare in crisis, harder than ever to get desperately needed aid to those who need it, more innocent children enduring a man-made famine, more civilians killed, but making it harder to get the remaining hostages out. Hostages who are still being held, who were seized by Hamas on the barbaric terrorist attack of October the 7th, and are still being held in the most horrendous conditions, prolonging the anguish for their families. And I reiterate our condemnation of Hamas and that barbaric terrorism in October the 7th. I met with some of the UK-linked hostage families again last week. Their ask of all of us is to keep the hostages at the forefront of our minds, to do everything we can to give their loved ones the chance of coming home and to achieve the ceasefire that gives them the chance to do that. And that must be our task. We know what needs to be done. We need a ceasefire now. We need the release of all the hostages. We need the immediate restoration of aid and support for medical care. And we need a broader framework for the lasting peace. And I welcome and support mediation efforts being made by the United States, Qatar, and Egypt to seek an end to conflict and to seek peace. We know too that Gaza cannot be seen in isolation from the West Bank. The Israeli government is tightening its stranglehold on the Palestinian economy and continuing to approve illegal settlement construction, including just recently in the E1 area of East Jerusalem, which is a further blow to the viability of a two-state solution. And we urge Israel to reverse these plans. After 2 years of bloodshed, I believe the world is united in wanting this awful war to end, united in wanting all the hostages released, united in rejection of any role for Hamas in the future of Gaza or the future of a Palestinian state, united in wanting Israel to unblock aid and end the humanitarian catastrophe, and united in wanting a better and more peaceful future for the region, with the reconstruction of Gaza, the dignity for its people, and a new era of relations to support their collective security. And that future must be based on a two-state solution. The UK's historic recognition of the state of Palestine this week is part of our commitment to peace, part of acting to protect the viability of the two-state solution as the only path to a just and lasting peace and to security for Palestinians and Israelis alike, part of rejecting extremist ideas on all sides, which involve too often fantasies of the destruction of the state of Israel or expulsion of the Palestinian population. We reject both of those. And part of our wider effort to work with partners on a long-term peace, not just to halt the immediate crisis, but an advance and a pragmatic plan for what comes next. None of this can happen without an immediate ceasefire, and that is where all of this has to start. One of the doctors yesterday described the impact on children of growing up in trauma and devastation. And those will be the consequences on generations to come if we do not act now. We owe it to all of those children growing up in Gaza, across Palestine, across Israel. We owe it to all of them to build a better future. The time for peace is now. Thank you.
I thank Her Excellency Ms. Cooper for the statement. I now give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Georgios Gerapatritis, Minister for Foreign Affairs of the Hellenic Republic.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to thank you personally for convening this important meeting today at a very critical moment for the Middle East. Distinguished colleagues, what we have been witnessing in the Gaza Strip, words fail to describe. The humanitarian catastrophe is ongoing. For almost 2 years, the civilian population has endured conditions that are unsustainable and deeply concerning. No one should be compelled to live under such circumstances. The expansion of military operations in the city of Gaza has led to further displacement and risks, worsening an already dire humanitarian crisis. This reality endangers civilian lives. Any further escalation in Gaza, which worsens the already dramatic situation for civilians, must be avoided. The plight of children underscores the urgent need to guarantee safe, unhindered, and sustained humanitarian access at scale to all parts of Gaza, in full respect of international law and international humanitarian law. Mr. President, Greece is actively engaged in all efforts to alleviate the suffering of the people in Gaza. We have consistently provided humanitarian assistance. We have already welcomed injured children from Gaza for treatment in Greek hospitals. On another strand of effort, we voted in favor of every draft resolution that would address the crisis in Gaza, the latest demanding the lifting of all restrictions on humanitarian aid. And this past May, I stood alongside the representatives of 80 UN members here in New York, reaffirming the significance of protecting civilians in armed conflicts. Humanitarian access is crucial to alleviating the suffering of the Palestinian population. Safe access to food, water, shelter, clothing, and medicines throughout the territory must be guaranteed, and international humanitarian law must be respected.